We're live. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Salesforce Bend LinkedIn Live. I'm Julia Solis. It's very nice to have you all here. I'm the marketing manager at SFB, but today I will also be hosting. So I'm very excited to have you all here. But before I continue, this is actually a record-breaking LinkedIn Live. It's our biggest yet, with over 3,000 people registering. So big round of applause to everybody who registered. Thank you so much, for helping us continue to grow our entire community. And I can actually imagine why this integration topic is so important. I'm fairly new to the Salesforce ecosystem, so I'm learning myself. But for a lot of non-developers, it remains a mystery. But don't worry, because Anup is here, and I will be introducing him soon. And you can see that once everything is broken down, it's fairly easy to understand. Also, as Salesforce is becoming the source of truth within so many businesses. Integrations are becoming vital to so many projects. So understanding them, you have to know it in order to excel at your job. And everybody out there who doesn't know what I'm talking about, don't worry. Or everybody who does understand what I'm talking about, welcome. Learning these kind of skills is only going to be better for your own value. If you're looking to upskill in your job, if you're looking for a new role, this is only going to be so much better for your improvement. So without further ado, let me introduce Anup to the chat. Hi, Anup.
Hello. Hey, Julia. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming and thanks for hosting this presentation. Like I said, I don't really know anything about it, so I'm so excited to learn about it. But obviously, you're a popular guy. We have 3,000 people who have registered and are obviously interested in what you have to say.
So no
So thank
pressure
you.
then.
No pressure, no pressure. So everybody out there, by the way, we're going to be having a live Q&A session at the end of the presentation. If you have any questions for Anup, drop them in the comments below. And also, this webinar is going to be recorded and will remain live on this page as well as our YouTube channel. So I'll see you later. Anup, it's off to you.
Thanks, Julia. Okay. All right. Hello and welcome to Salesforce Integration Crash Course. Thanks again for joining me. Thanks again for your time and for your attention. Let's crack on. But before we jumping in, we need to cover our forward-looking statement. As you know, Salesforce is a publicly traded company. So please make all purchasing and partnership decisions based on generally available products and services. Okay. Here are a few housekeeping tasks. Lines are all muted for sound quality. You can submit your questions in the Q&A box that you should see on LinkedIn Live. And this webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the YouTube channel later. Okay, so that out of the way. So here's what we are going to do today. As the title suggests, we are going to cover as much ground as possible with regards to Salesforce integration. We will look at the integration patterns and also review around 15 data integration tools. This will be followed by a live solution design. We'll pick a requirement and I'll draw out the solution on a digital whiteboard. So let's see how that goes. Hi, I'm Anup Jadhav. I'm part of the Architect Success team and I lead the Solution Architect program at Salesforce. If you haven't heard of Architect Success team or the Solution Architect program, our program's mandate is enablement. Our job is to enable the partners and the ecosystem onto what their career paths need to look like to be a B2B and B2C solution architect. So here are the three programs within Architect Success. So we have the B2C Solution Architect Program and B2B Solution Architect Program, which was announced back in 2020, and the Enterprise Architect Program, which was announced or launched in 2021. The program lead for B2C Solution Architect Program is Gaj Singh, and for B2B, it's Taylor Grimes. And for the Enterprise Architect, the program lead is Divya Alavarthi. So if you're curious about these programs and if you want to find out more about the certification, especially the B2B and B2C architect certification, please reach out to these individuals on LinkedIn or to me. Okay, thank you. Right, so in the course of this talk, we'll look at various integration patterns and a multitude of integration tools. Before diving into the details, it's worth pausing and asking yourself, Um, why does a good integration design matter? Why should we bother learning about these patterns, tools, or techniques? Why is it important to get the integration right? Apart from the obvious technical reason that wrong decisions can make things complicated, and costly over time. We can answer these questions in two ways. When you get the integration right, the customer, the end user, or the buyer has a seamless experience when they are buying or using your product or service. And one of the crucial elements of this is to have good data flowing through systems. The systems do the hard work so that the customer has an easy experience. The other reason is so that your employees have access to this information in a timely fashion. So it's about putting the right information in the right hands at the right time. This in turn will help them serve their customers better. So this is why you should get integration right. Okay, let's start by looking at the various integration design patterns available to us. So first one is simple. The simplest pattern to understand is the inbound versus outbound pattern. So inbound is calling into Salesforce from an external system, and outbound is calling out from Salesforce to an external system. And then we have synchronous pattern. It basically means when Salesforce makes a call out to an external system, the process waits for a response. It's also called point-to-point pattern sometimes, or another fancy way of calling it would be remote process invocation, because it's invoking a remote process. It's real time, which means that you get the response or you get an error message. The error handling is very simple. When you send a request, and if you send invalid parameters or input, the response will let you know that there was something went wrong, or if the external system is unavailable, you'll find that out as well. So the error handling is relatively simple. The retry mechanism can be complex to implement, especially when the external system is not available. So that trying to build that retry logic can be gnarly. Then we have the asynchronous pattern. Here we make a call out to an external system and immediately return. It means that we don't wait for a response. Sometimes we might wait for an acknowledgement, but mostly you just fire a request and forget about it. It's not real time. That does not mean that it can't be near real time. We can design it so that the process is completed in near real time. The error handling is complex because we are not waiting for the actual response. So if we make a request and the request contains invalid parameters, and the request eventually fails because the parameters are not correct, it's very difficult to then try to handle that error retrospectively. Okay. And the most popular type of asynchronous communication or integration is an event bus. So an event driven, or it's also called message driven software architecture, consists of event producers, event consumers, and channels. In the middle, the architecture is suitable for large distributed systems because it decouples the event producers from the event consumers. I think it's useful to clarify a couple of terminology here because you'll be looking at event pattern in detail later. Let's start with an event. What's an event? An event is a change in state that is meaningful in a business process. For example, if you convert a lead into an account or contact, or when a case is closed, or when an opportunity is set to closed one, these are all meaningful changes in state within the context of your business process. So that's an event. An event message contains data about the event, also known as an event notification. So you have producer that publishes the event and consumer that subscribes to the event message. Then there's the message queue, also known as event channel sometimes, is a stream of events on which a event producer sends the event messages and event consumers reads those messages. So let's take an example. Let's say that Salesforce is the publisher and an external system like the order fulfillment system is the subscriber. So in Salesforce, we close an opportunity and this creates an order record which needs to be fulfilled. Either closing the opportunity or the creation of the order record creates an event that is then sent to the message queue. The fulfillment system app is subscribed to the opportunity or order event. It receives the event when they're published, and then they act on it. It's also possible that they subsequently generate their own events and publish them back onto the queue. So that's the pub sub event driven pattern. The publishers and subscribers are decoupled. The retry mechanism is relatively simple because the message queue takes care of the retries if the subscriber system is offline. But error handling can be complex if things go wrong, though. So you have to cater for that. Okay. And then we have the middleware pattern. It's typically an enterprise service bus that can do more than just manage messages or events. It can act as an API registry, or it can act as an ETL tool, which means extract, transform, load. It can extract data from the source system, transform it, and then load the data into destination application. The communication is asynchronous because it decouples the source and destination application. It can be designed to be in near real time if you wanted it to be. But most importantly, it enables a microservices kind of architecture, which means that you can build your applications as a series of services that does one thing and one thing only, and they talk to each other by passing messages or events through the ESB. This, in turn, leads to a low coupling, which means that these applications and clouds are independent. If one component or system in this architecture goes down, it won't take the entire process or application down with it. Um, all this freedom and features does mean that the design is going to end up being complex. And depending on what your needs are, it can also be costly to purchase the ESP and set it all up. There is a significant upfront setup cost to this. Another pattern is where you get a view of the external data and use it almost like a native S-object data without storing the data locally. This pattern is called data virtualization. In the Salesforce world, we use Salesforce Connect and external objects to achieve this goal without writing that data in Salesforce. I will look at both of these tools in detail later in the talk. And the thing is, this data by default is read-only, but you can make them writable by using some special database methods like insert async. If the external system supports OData API, then you can just use point-and-click tools to set up the connection and get that data into Salesforce in minutes. Or you can choose to write a simple Apex adapter to connect to any web API. There is some additional cost involved when using data virtualization, especially in the Salesforce ecosystem. Okay, so those were some of the common design patterns that we'll come across when we integrate Salesforce with external systems. It's not an exhaustive list by any means. There are plenty more patterns. Sometimes they're categorized differently, but those were the most common patterns that you'll come across. Now we'll look at a few data integration tools that use these patterns. I said a few, but we have around 15 tools to look at today. Okay, so we'll start with Apex actions. So Apex actions are Apex methods annotated with the @invocable method that has logic to make a call out to an external system. These methods are then invocable from a flow using the flow element called Apex action. Now, when do you want to use this? It's ideal to use this when you want to automate callouts to another system via flow. A developer can write an Apex class that a flow can invoke, or you can download a pre-built solution from App Exchange. You don't need any licensing for this. It supports both synchronous and asynchronous pattern. It has supports for multiple objects, but doesn't support bulk, and it can support both inbound and outbound scenarios. Okay. Then we have change data capture. So with change data capture, you can receive, let me get this right, you can receive near real-time changes of Salesforce records and then synchronize corresponding records in an external data store. So change data capture publishes change events, which represents changes to Salesforce records. Changes could include creation of a record or update to an existing record, deletion and undeletion of a record. When to use this? when you want to publish record level changes in Salesforce to an external system, but don't need a custom payload. It's useful to think of it as a real-time data replication process for the cloud. You do need an additional licensing for CDC. It only supports asynchronous pattern, and it doesn't have support for multiple object or bulk. And the only scenario it supports is the outbound scenario. Okay, and this is the easiest one, custom Apex. You can write custom Apex to call external web services directly. That is, it can be point to point, or you can call it via middleware. So that's the outbound scenario. For inbound, you can write a REST-based web service in Apex that can then be called by an external system. When should you use custom Apex? When you need to do something complex and other declarative tools are not sufficient for your needs. I think it's very important to emphasize this point. You should only consider complex, custom Apex as an option when you've exhausted the declarative or point and click tools. You don't need any licensing for using custom Apex. It supports synchronous and asynchronous, multiple objects. You can use it in bulk, and it supports both inbound and outbound scenarios like I described. And then we have native APIs. Now, typically, when we talk about platform APIs, we mostly hear about REST API, or if you're using a legacy system, SOAP API, and sometimes bulk API, which is basically a wrapper around the REST API. But as I have discovered when I was prepping for this session, we have around 32 different types of APIs. There's GraphQL API, which is relatively new. There's Einstein Bot API, Pardot API, B2C Commerce API, etc. I mean, this list doesn't cover Slack API, so we have Slack APIs on top of this list. So hopefully this demonstrates that Salesforce is truly an API-first platform. Sorry. Okay, so what does that look like? So in this case, you would use the out-of-the-box APIs to access and change the data in Salesforce. Again, this can be point-to-point or through a middleware. When should you use this? Again, you should consider using out of the box when you need something more complex and declarative tools are not sufficient, or you need granular control over how you want to access this data, how you want to access the data. In terms of licensing, you do need licenses sometimes, especially if you're accessing industries API, because you probably need licensing to enable the industry's functionality and the data before you access that data and function through the API. It can support both synchronous and asynchronous, multi-object support, bulk support is there, and it's inbound by nature because you are calling the API from the external system. Okay. Okay. Then we have external services. So external services allows you to declaratively connect to an external REST API that's implemented using OpenAPI standards. So it's ideal when the externally hosted REST API or RESTful service, the external hosted service is a RESTful service, and the API specification is available in OpenAPI 2.0 and I think 3.0 format. And you can invoke these external services transactions from Apex or even from point and click automation tools like Flow, Einstein bots, etc. The reason you can use this with Flow is because external services creates it's ideally used when when you're orchestrating a process using Salesforce Flow, and the external system APIs are described using OpenAPI specification. You don't need a license to use this. It only supports synchronous pattern. It does have multiple object support, but not used in bulk scenarios, and it's outbound only for now. And then we have generic events. So generic events, you should use them to send custom notifications that are not tied to Salesforce data changes. So I'll repeat that. These events are not tied to any specific Salesforce data changes. Probably that's why they're called generic events, and are only publishable via the REST API. So use them when you want to send and receive custom notifications, when when you have to publish and receive arbitrary payloads in JSON format without any predefined event schema, or you want to broadcast notifications to a target set of users, or even your entire organization. Now, one thing to note is that push topics, generic events, platform events, and change data capture events, they're all part of the streaming API. So streaming API enables streaming of events using push technology, and it provides a subscription mechanism for receiving events in near real time. Streaming events uses the Bayou protocol, and uses the Comet D client for long polling subscription. Is something to keep in mind. Okay, back to generic events. When to use them, when you need to publish events via API with the flexibility of a user-defined payload that is not strongly typed, which basically means it doesn't have a predefined format, event format, and it's not tied to Salesforce data changes. You don't need a license to use this. It's more appropriate in an async scenario. It does have multiple object support, no bulk support, and it's useful in used in an outbound context. Okay, then we have Heroku Connect. So Heroku Connect makes it easy for you to build Heroku apps that share data with your Salesforce org. You can use Heroku Connect for bi-directional synchronization between Salesforce and Heroku Postgres database. Once you have your Heroku app and database set up, you might have an existing app and database. You can then easily configure Heroku Connect with a point-and-click UI. It's simple to get the service up and running in minutes. You don't need any coding or complex configuration to set this up, but you do need dev skills to have the Heroku app running. So when to use it? When you want to extend your data with bidirectional sync, and you also want the data to be replicated to Salesforce. You do need additional licensing. It's asynchronous in terms of the synchronization timing. It does have multiple object support, bulk support, and can do both inbound and outbound. Okay. Okay. Now we're getting serious. So if you are a medium to large enterprise customer with complex requirements around integration, data flow, and governance, you need something like MuleSoft Anypoint Platform. We're kind of entering the territory of integration platform as a service. I think listing out and describing the features of Anypoint Platform is probably a 60 to 90-minute talk in itself, but I'll try to list a few key takeaways for this talk. So you should think of MuleSoft Anypoint as a platform instead of just a middleware. It has a full-fledged API design and management toolkit, including the governance involved around API discovery, versioning, and monitoring. It also has a robust ecosystem and marketplace called Anypoint Exchange that allows you to jumpstart your development with pre-built templates and accelerators. And if that's not enough, it is compliant with ISO 27001, SOC 1 and 2, HIPAA, GDPR, PCI, etc. And it's also very flexible. You can deploy it on-premise, or you can deploy it to Mule's cloud service called Cloud Hub, or to your own private cloud using I think Anytime Runtime Fabric, if I'm not wrong. Well, in summary, it's a very versatile platform for all of your integration needs. When should you use it? When you need a single enterprise-grade unified solution, or when you want to replace a legacy point-to-point architecture. In fact, it's ideal for that kind of scenario, especially in a large enterprise environment, or when you need API management support, or when you need off-the-shelf connectors. It does need additional licensing. It supports sync and async, multiple objects, bulk, and both inbound and outbound scenarios. Okay. Then we have MuleSoft Composer, which is a Salesforce point and click tool that enables business users and admins who probably don't have developer skills to easily build integrations. This means you can build process automation using clicks instead of code. Composer works in conjunction with flows and can be triggered on events or on a schedule. Um, as you can see in the diagram, it includes a variety of pre-built connectors like NetSuite, Tableau, Salesforce, Slack, and Workday that allows you to build integrations and automations right within Salesforce using Flow. For example, through the Salesforce connector, you can configure a trigger or an event on the opportunity object to initiate the flow. The flow can then read from an opportunity. The flow can then read the opportunity details or get related order item information, and then create an order in an external system. Let's say in a NetSuite ERP. Now, this would have been a developer or at a minimum a technical integration expert's job in the past, but with Composer, you can now empower an admin or a business user to build this with point and click tools. When to use it, when you need to connect Salesforce data with an external system using the off-the-shelf connector that we looked at with an easy to support interface that doesn't require any code. So yeah, if you want to build something using declarative tools with an off-the-shelf connector, MuleSoft Composer is a wonderful solution. You do need additional licensing. It supports both sync and async. It has multiple object support. It has bulk support and can do both inbound and outbound scenarios. Okay, almost there, more than I think 70% there. So Omni Studio integration procedure. Now this is another point and click integration tool that is available as part of the Omni Studio package. So this is relevant to you if you are an Omni Studio customer or an industries customer. An IP is a declarative server-side process that can execute multiple actions in a single server call. What does that mean? For example, if you can take data from a case record in Salesforce, transform it, send it to an external service or system, get a response back, and create or update the case record or create another related record. So you should be able to build all that orchestration within a single IP. It's very similar to Salesforce auto-launched flows. Um, it can also execute Apex code without any user interaction, and it can be called from an OmniScript or from an Apex method, or it can be even exposed as an API for external systems to call it. If you're familiar with Omni Studio, it is usually a data source for flex cards. It's ideal to use if you are an Omni Studio customer and you need to transform data without user interaction and improve the performance by processing on the server instead of the browser. It does need additional licensing, but it supports sync, async, multiple object, bulk, can be used in both inbound and outbound. Okay, and now we are looking at outbound messages. Now I'm going to start by saying that you should prefer platform events to outbound messaging and workflow rules in this new world if you have a requirement to send messages externally, but plenty of implementations still have outbound messaging today, so it's useful to understand this. So that's why I've included this in this talk. So outbound messaging allows you to specify that changes to fields within Salesforce can cause messages with field values to be sent to designated external servers. So yeah, it just sends messages to an external server, and we'll talk about how it does that. It's part of the workflow rule functionality in Salesforce. So before flows and Apex actions, if you had to send a notification or message to an external system and you didn't want to write code, you would have used outbound messaging. It sends SOAP messages, as shown in the diagram, over HTTPS to a designated endpoint. A single SOAP message can include up to 100 notifications, and each notification contains the object ID and a reference to the associated S-object data. When to use it? Ideally, you shouldn't use it unless you have a very specific requirement or need to send SOAP messages. Oh, can you see my screen? Oops, is something happening? All good? Yeah, let me check. Okay, all good, I think. All good. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so it's only ideal when you want to send SOAP messages over HTTPS to a designated endpoint, and it's triggered by workflow rule. But yeah, I think we'll talk about platform events next. That's a better solution for sending messages externally. You don't need any licensing. It's asynchronous. It doesn't have multi-object or bulk support, and it's used for outbound scenarios, but it's not ideal because you have platform events. Just going to take a look at comments. Okay, too many comments to scroll through. Okay, we'll do Q&A later. Okay, thank you. Right, so platform events. Um, yeah, I'll start by saying that if you're considering asynchronous implementation, you should start with platform events. And only when platform events are not suitable for your needs, then you should consider other options. Platform events are secure and scalable messages that contain data. Publishers publish event messages that subscribers can receive in real time. They're part of Salesforce's enterprise messaging platform. The platform provides an event-driven messaging architecture that enables apps to communicate inside and outside of Salesforce. Now, we talked about the event-driven design pattern earlier in the talk, so I'm not going to go over it again. I do want to talk about the event bus, though, very briefly. Uh, it's useful to understand some of the features of event bus. The event bus is a multi-tenant, multi-cloud event storage and delivery service that's based on the publish subscribe model, pub-sub model. It's based on a time-ordered event log, which ensures that event messages are stored and delivered in the order that they are received by Salesforce. And you can retrieve the stored event messages from the event bus using a streaming API, like a Comet client or a PubSub API client. And if you're a Shield customer, you can enable encryption of these platform event messages while they're stored in the event bus. So there's plenty of useful features that make them an attractive choice for integration. When to use them, when you need a custom-defined structured payload for near real-time changes in Salesforce to an external system. Licensing is not required, except you do need an add-on for high volume use cases. So just keep that in mind. It supports asynchronous pattern, obviously, and it has support for multiple object. It doesn't support bulk because for events, you can create a lot of events in bulk, and if it's high volume, you just need the add-on. So yeah, because of its nature, it doesn't need to support the bulk scenario. In terms of type, it can do both inbound and outbound. Okay. Right. We are nearing the end of the integration tools. 3 more to go. Push topic. Uh, push topic events are, again, they're part of the streaming API category of events. Again, it's another scalable way to receive notifications for changes to Salesforce data that match a specific SOQL query that you've defined. So it's ideal for receiving notifications of Salesforce record changes like create, update, delete, and undelete. Um, and you have to just specify the SOQL query for the changes in the fields and records. A typical application, in fact, the only application I've seen for push topic, and it could be my limited experience of using push topics, is refreshing the UI of an app from Salesforce record changes. It's very easy to build something using push topics for that kind of scenario. Okay. It's ideal when you're surfacing notifications within the Salesforce UI based on record changes. Yeah, like I said, that's when I would use them. Don't need a license for this. It supports asynchronous pattern, multi-object support, no, bulk support, yes. It's used for outbound, but I would say it's not ideal. Platform events is a better choice, especially if you're interacting with external systems. Okay, Salesforce Connect. So we looked at this right at the beginning when we were talking about data virtualization as part of the integration patterns section. So just as a reminder, data virtualization means that the data is not replicated into Salesforce, but you get a view of the data that's stored in external systems. So Salesforce Connect, along with external objects, implement the data virtualization pattern. So the external objects allows you to access the data. You can also report on it. It's almost like the S object, but not quite. There are still a few limitations. The data is read only by default, but like I said earlier, you can make it writable using Apex by calling some special methods on the database object, which are called database.insert async and database.update async. And I think from the method name, you can deduce that these are asynchronous methods. The data is never stale because you are getting a view of the live data, and you would access only what you need. So if your org storage is restricted, and the external system supports OData protocol, then data virtualization with Salesforce Connect and external objects is an ideal solution. I think that's the recommendation when you want large volumes of data to appear in Salesforce UI, but want the data to be stored in an external system that can use the OData protocol. Then you should use this. You do need additional license for this, and the timing is it supports synchronous pattern. It does have multiple object support. It supports bulk, but you have to be aware of callout limits and based on edition. And it supports both inbound and outbound. Okay, and the last one is Salesforce connectors. So the last pattern before we wrap up is the Salesforce out-of-the-box connector pattern. You might be surprised to learn, I was when I found this, that we have quite a few connectors that are available to connect core Salesforce clouds or platform with Marketing Cloud, Commerce Cloud, Heroku, and CDP. So here on the screen, you can see we talked about Heroku Connect earlier, but we have Marketing Connector or between Commerce Platform and Marketing Platform. We have Marketing Cloud Connect between Marketing Cloud and Salesforce. We have distributed marketing, so on and so forth. So I'll just talk briefly about Marketing Cloud Connect. So Marketing Cloud Connect combines the digital marketing capabilities of Marketing Cloud with the data management and campaign management tools in Salesforce. You can very easily map the attributes between Marketing Cloud and Salesforce CRM. And one of the reasons you'd want to use this is to enable more personalization in your flow, in your process. With social customer service connector, you can convert any social network post into cases or leads, or agents can reply to the social network posts from the service console. um, and then finally, B2C CRM sync connector between Commerce Cloud, B2C Commerce Platform, and Salesforce syncs information between these two systems. When to use them? When you want to connect to Salesforce clouds and the connector satisfies your requirements. It's a very straightforward recommendation, I would say. Always evaluate if the connector satisfies your requirements, and if it doesn't, only then look at other options. Okay, so we covered a lot, but there are still a few things that I did not cover. I didn't cover database connectors like Amazon RDS, Google Cloud Spanner, or Snowflake connector. I didn't cover application connectors like Microsoft Dynamics connector, NetSuite, even Google Analytics, which is quite common. I didn't cover the Slack APIs and integration options. Slack is the data flow between Slack and Salesforce is more and more important as the two platforms integrate and you incorporate Slack workflows in your business process. That'll be a talk in itself, and happy to do another talk on this. I didn't cover customer data platform, again, another big topic. And customer data platform is currently used within the context of Marketing Cloud, but this functionality is going to evolve into the Genie offering that we saw that was launched at Dreamforce this year, a safe harbor. It's I don't know what that evolution looks like. The knowledge about it is limited. And I also didn't talk about authentication mechanism. When we talk about integration, you always have to consider authentication because these two things are intertwined. When I talk about authentication mechanisms, I mean OAuth, two-way SSL, connected apps. So a connected app is important to know because it's a primary mechanism to manage identity and access control whenever the Salesforce platform is interacting with an outside system, including other Salesforce products that are not running on the core platform. So I didn't cover those topics. Um, but here's the call to action. So as a call to action, I'd highly recommend that you check out these resources as soon as possible. So the first one is the architect.salesforce.com, which is the digital home for all Salesforce architects and has tons of resources, templates, decision guides to help you with your implementation. Their recently launched framework called Well Architect Framework is amazing. It shows you what a good implementation looks like, where to spend your time road mapping and designing solutions with the Salesforce platform. And then the second resource is the Data Integration Decision Guide, which was used as a primary source for this presentation. So do check that out. And and if you'd indulge me, I want to do a shameless plug for the Solution Architect program. Check out these two URLs. Take a snapshot or screenshot of this slide. Check out these two URLs where you can find all of the artifacts and courses and everything else that we've created and curated for your enablement as an architect. Okay, thank you. Thanks again for giving me your time and attention. And I hope you found that useful. Thank you. Over to you, Julia.
Buy online and pick up in store. Now, you might ask, in this age of next day delivery, why would you want to build something like this? So there are a number of reasons why people would want to buy something online and then decide to pick up in store. One of the reasons could be they want to reduce shipping costs, or they want to receive the merchandise faster than 24 hours. Or they might want to take advantage of some special discount and promotion. So this is a very good use case because it gives us a view of a solution design when we incorporate multiple clouds and applications. So for this solution design, I'll make some assumptions. I'll assume that we are using Salesforce Clouds and Salesforce Platform for the solution. Here is a high-level process view, and I'll walk through this in a bit. But let's look at the different components. So you have the buyer who is doing the buying, the purchasing. So that's your buyer. We have Commerce Cloud. So the commerce website is hosted on B2C commerce side. And then we have the OMS system, which is the order management system. And for this use case, we'll assume that that system is hosted on Salesforce. And then we have the actual physical store where the employees collect and package the merchandise. And then finally, we have Marketing Cloud, which is used for sending emails or any other comms as part of this process. Okay, so the whole process starts by the buyer. When the buyer places the order online, they choose the product, add to cart, complete the payment process, and finalize the checkout process. So once they place the order online, it then goes to Commerce Cloud, or well, they do this on Commerce Cloud because the commerce website is built on that platform. So the Commerce Cloud platform will, at that point, send the order confirmation message. So it will interact with Marketing Cloud and trigger an order confirmation email to the buyer. It will also push the order information to the order management system. The order management system will route the order to the store. So you can imagine here you have a store employee. Let's call them Jack. Jack is using an iPad to keep track of all the orders that are coming to the store. So he sees this order come in and he picks up the product and parks the product for collection. Then he goes back to the order management system and says the order is ready for pickup. This will then trigger an email back to the customer. So the order management system will communicate with Marketing Cloud and will say the order is ready, and an order ready email will go to the customer. The customer receives the order ready email here, and in that email probably there is a link to confirm the pickup time, and they do that. And at some point they go and pick up the order. So this is step 10 in the process, which in turn then gets updated in OMS that the order is picked up. And finally, OMS will update the record in Commerce Cloud to say, yep, it's all done, the order is picked up. And the Commerce Cloud will initiate or trigger another email from Marketing Cloud to finish or complete the order. So that is a complete process flow of how this will work. Now let's take a look at an integration design for this. Let's talk about what the integration design will look like with the different components that we just looked at. Okay, so in the middle we have Salesforce, and Salesforce will have Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, and also OMS functionality. Okay, that's Salesforce box. And then let's draw the commerce box. So for the commerce website, we are using B2C Commerce. And we build the entire website on B2C Commerce here. And then, of course, we have the customer who is making the purchase, and they're happy about their purchase. They place that purchase here. It's a trolley for Commerce Cloud. Okay, and then we have Marketing Cloud here, which is used for customer communication. And if you use Marketing Cloud, some of the common components are you'd have a journey builder. In this case, we'll be using Email Studio a lot. As we saw, we'll be sending a lot of emails. And we could also be using Interaction Studio, but we'll just limit it to these two things here. Okay. Right, so that's Marketing Cloud. Okay, so we have these three components or systems talking to each other. Now, if you were to integrate between Salesforce and Commerce Cloud, you can do so with point-to-point API integration. So let's say API. So B2C Commerce supports Open Commerce API, and also its latest iteration, which I just called Commerce APIs. And obviously with Salesforce, we saw all of the different APIs that it supports, so I don't need to draw it here, but let's assume for this use case, we'll use the REST APIs to update information or to access the information from Salesforce. Okay, so that's simple. Between Salesforce and Marketing Cloud, you could potentially use APIs to do the communication, but we won't do that here. We will instead use a connector called Marketing Cloud Connect. And this connector is suitable for a lot of common use cases when you're synchronizing data and process between Salesforce and Marketing Cloud. So we'll make use of this out-of-the-box connector that's available to us. And now, as we saw up here, Commerce Cloud is also sending data to Marketing Cloud. So how would that work? Again, we'll opt for, at least in the first iteration, we could opt for a point-to-point API connection here. So this would again be an API integration. So they both support REST APIs. So there'll be REST API here and REST here. On top of this, you could also have a feed set up between these two systems. And this data feed can be used to transfer on a nightly basis information about the products and some information about the customer to Marketing Cloud. So in that scenario, when you are connecting, when you're asking Marketing Cloud to send that email, you're not sending all the product information in that request, because the product information or the product description and other things are already stored in Marketing Cloud tables. I think those tables are called data extensions. So you would have that information stored locally here. And this is a one-way feed, because B2C commerce is the primary source of truth for customer information or customer commerce information, commerce profile, and also the product inventory information and product information as well. Maybe not the inventory, maybe the inventory is stored in OMS. Okay, so this is the first iteration. Now, one thing you probably that's implied and not explicit here is that the data about the buyer, let's call the buyer Jason. So this information about Jason is spread across these multiple systems here. So you could have Jason's commerce profile here. Then obviously we would have the account or person account for Jason here, and then finally we would have some contact information for Jason here as well. So we have system-specific profiles for Jason across these three different systems, and it's possible that these three different systems were sourced with the data about Jason in different ways. It's possible that Marketing Cloud was populated as part of a campaign, or Jason came in as a lead because they expressed an interest about some merchandise on the website. And it's possible that in Salesforce we got that information when through a call center agent, and over here Jason registered to purchase something in the past. So it's possible that Jason provided different email address here, another email address here, or even residential address. So how do we identify Jason through all these systems consistently? Now, one recommended solution is to use something called as a CDP, which is a customer data platform. So what you do here is you ingest data from all these different systems and you create a global profile for Jason, which then creates a global profile ID for Jason, and then you can use or pass this global profile ID to these different systems here, and then use that global profile ID as the identifier to consistently recognize Jason across these different systems. So that's one way of doing this. Now, how can you make this architecture even better? So as you've probably seen, there are a lot of arrows drawn here, one system calling another. You have connection between B2B commerce and Marketing Cloud. You have connection between Marketing Cloud and Salesforce and Marketing Cloud. So a lot of point-to-point connection happening, and you can see easily why this can be very complex. So you can enhance this. I'm not going to draw this because we are out of time, is by using a middleware architecture. So you can consider using something like MuleSoft or any other ESB that's suitable for your requirements. So you can choose to use a middleware. You can make the architecture more message driven or event driven. I should say event driven rather than message, so that these systems are decoupled. Remember, event driven can also be near real time. You don't have to send this information or make this have to have this communication synchronous. This can be asynchronous. It can be almost near real time as well. It doesn't mean it'll take hours or days to send this information asynchronously to Marketing Cloud. It could just be a matter of seconds. So it does, event space does not mean that it's not going to be real time. Even if your requirements are immediate, you can still implement it with near real-time event-driven architecture. So yeah, I think if you do those two enhancements, your architecture will be less brittle, more decoupled, and you can enhance different components independently. And that's it. So we talked about the use case, we talked about the process, we talked about the integration and the data flow. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any feedback, please let me know on Twitter or LinkedIn. Thank you.
I'm on mute. Sorry about that. Hey, Anup, that was really good. So thank you so much.
Cool. No worries. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, we did. We had so many good questions. So we're going to be diving right in.
Okay.
Yes, and by the way, everybody, anybody who thought that we would have a hard stop at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, I don't know exactly where everybody's tuning in from. We are going to be extending the Q&A session for an extra 10 minutes. So if you have any questions for Anup, drop them in the comment box, and then he'll get right to them. So Anup, I hope you're ready.
Is it a quick fire round?
So we have Barbara's first question. What is needed for data virtualization if not using Salesforce Connect?
Good question. I think you could so the whole point of data virtualization is you don't want to store that information in Salesforce. So another way of doing this would be using Salesforce Canvas, where you can, that involves building the canvas, which requires developer skills, but it's another way of iframing that data, although I shouldn't call it iframing because Canvas is superior to an iframe. So you'd build a Canvas app. The Canvas app will make a call out to the external system, get the data, and then display that data to the user inside Salesforce. And the Canvas app will take care of all of the authentication that's needed behind the scenes. So that would be another way of doing data virtualization in Salesforce.
Thank you. Barbara, I hope I answered your question. I'm sorry, everybody. I am trying to find all of the questions that we're trying to, so please bear with me. By the way, as I'm looking for these, this webinar is going to be recorded and it's going to remain live on this very page, as well as our YouTube channel. Oh, here it is. So Mark has a very interesting question. Is the pub sub API a replacement for the streaming API?
I don't think it's a replacement. No, it's another way of interacting with Salesforce. Although I'm struggling to recall the benefit of using PubSub API at the moment, but no, I don't think it's a replacement. These two are two different things. Streaming API will still be there, and PubSub will be. But although PubSub is better to use with platform events, but sorry, I don't recall. I don't remember the main the real reason for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It's all good. So we have Keith's question next. Workflow outbound messages have retries baked in. Do flows support the same?
I think one thing to understand is that flow in itself is not an integration tool. So that question is, I think the real question is, can you build retry logic in Flow? The answer is yes. It will be complex, but you could potentially build retry logic in Flow. But also keep in mind that Flow itself is not a integration tool. That's why Flow was not one of the options. All of these other tools were. So, for example, external services. Then the first one that I covered was Apex Actions, which these are some of the things that you can invoke from Flow, and they do the call out or they do the integration work or whatever else. But yes, technically you should be able to uh, build your own custom retry logic inside of Flow. I don't know if that answers your question, Keith. Sorry.
I hope it does. And if Keith, if that didn't explain it well enough, do let us know in the comment section. Great. So I do have another one for Barbara. So thanks, Barbara. I think you're very active. Can you explain about Comet D?
Uh, Not very well. So a comedy, I would say, is a it's a HTTP based routing bus that uses Ajax technology, that's known as Comet. And to be honest, that's the extent of my actual low level knowledge of Comet. What I do know is that how it will work, right? So the way I try to understand Comet D and the Bayou protocol and all of these things is from methods that I exposed from the streaming API. So some of the Comet D methods are you can connect to the client, you can disconnect to the client. There's some handshake stuff that you can do to establish that long polling. But basically, you would use Comet D to subscribe to all of these events as part of that PubSub technology that's facilitated by streaming API. So the streaming API uses the Bayou protocol for publishing the events, and Comet D is one of the mechanisms for connecting and then subscribing to events. So all of these different events that we talked about, generic events, change data capture, I think even platform events. So yeah, I think that's how I view Comet D or understand Comet D.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this isn't quite a question, but Hans did have a comment, and I hope you can talk to it. A big problem that I face is that I would like to take the error apart and automate processes based on the type of error. So not just get the error, but then read it and base my response on the content.
Yeah, I don't know what the question is. I think I'm guessing they're asking for an approach. But yeah, I think we'd all like that. But again, this some of the tools that I mentioned support this. So all of the custom tools that involve development, we should be able to build this logic, especially if they are synchronous. So the error handling is simple if the context or if the pattern we are using is synchronous. You make a call, you get either you get a correct value back or you get an error value back. And if you get an error value back, then you should be able to build some logic to tackle that error. So you should be able to do that. You should definitely be able to do that using Apex. To an extent, you should also be able to do that in Flow if it's synchronous, even in integration procedure. If it's asynchronous, things get interesting because you could send the event onto the event bus. Then the subscriber will, consume the event, and if it then freaks out because the parameters in the event are incorrect or whatever, but handling that is you'd have to handle that asynchronously. So you won't be able to inspect the error that you get back. So in synchronous, yes, with custom Apex code or whatever else external, if you're using a Node.js app that connects to Salesforce, you should be able to do all of this if it's synchronous.
Hopefully that's a question that that Hans had. But thank you so much. And I do have another one from Mark. What if you combine the event-driven and middleware patterns?
Yeah, go for it. Only good things can happen if you do that. I think the way I look at this is for any integration project, start simple. start with the simplest integration that satisfies your business requirements, because you could build a very complex implementation like you suggest, but s- build itself, the design itself is not the issue, but maintaining that over time, extending that over time could be a problem. So if your requirements are just sending a small piece of data from one system to another system, I would start simple. And the simplest approach now available to us is platform events. You don't even have to have a middleware. That is an event-driven approach. The reason you would want a middleware is if you think you need all of these additional capabilities around managing APIs, versioning, monitoring, or if you want to do things like extract, transform, load, if you want other capabilities around synchronous, asynchronous, near real time, I think, and that'll happen. If your requirements evolve, then you would want to then combine these different approaches. But yeah, it's doable. If the answer is, can we do it? What if we combine? Uh, I think it's useful, but it depends on the context. It depends on the requirements. And my suggestion always is start simple, and then you can build complexity on top of that if needed.
Thank you. Okay, then we've been having like an onslaught of questions because everybody's just, well, we have a few minutes left, everybody, so just throw them in there. We have Naveen over here. So what is OpenID Connect integration?
OpenID Connect integration. Not sure. Let me see. Which one are they talking about? Are they talking about Salesforce Connect? Let me see.
Naveen, if you're still watching, you can clarify your question.
There's OpenID Connect integration. I'll have to pass on that one. I don't know what they mean.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fine. I did have another one that I bookmarked over here. So bear with me, everybody, again. Yes.
Unless they mean Salesforce Connect, which is a different thing. No, that's OData, right?
It's okay. It's perfectly fine. Naveen hasn't had a chance to answer, so we can just revisit it. If anybody wants to jump in and ask for specifics from him, that's perfectly fine. But anyway, we are coming to a close to our webinar. So everybody, thank you so much for joining. Anup, like I said, you're a very popular person. Obviously, we had 3,000 registrations, 3,000 plus since we started live streaming. So everybody, keep connecting with us. We actually just relaunched, we're about to relaunch our new YouTube channel. It's going to be shared in the comments section below. Be sure to subscribe. A lot of new content is coming your way. Anup is probably going to be collaborating with us, hopefully. So
For
yes,
sure.
yeah, that'll be exciting. So everybody, thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.